Welcome to the Real Estate Guys radio program. I'm your host, Robert Helms. At the core of what we do in real estate is problem solving. We create solutions for people who have needs. And there's lots of real estate needs, so there's lots of potential solutions. Today we're going to talk about a lucrative and not that well-known niche for a special tenant you're going to feel good about helping out on the Real Estate Guys radio program. All aboard! It's last call for the Real Estate Guys 22nd Annual Investor Summit at Sea. This one-of-a-kind event is nearly sold out, so grab your spot now. Joining us this year is the rebel capitalist George Gammon, sales legend and best-selling author Tom Hopkins, CPA Tom Wheelwright, and Ken and Daniil McElroy. Plus, Anton Matley, Mauricio Raul, Beth Clifford, Brad Sumrock, and joining us for his 11th Investor Summit, Peter Schiff. It all begins June 13th in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Visit investorsummitAtSea.com to get all the details and reserve your spot now. And we still have room for a few young adults, ages 18 to 25 at a very special rate. Go to investorsummitAtSea.com and make plans to spend time with the Real Estate Guys, Ken McElroy, Peter Schiff, and an all-star faculty on the 22nd Annual Investors Summit at Sea. Welcome to the Real Estate Guys radio show. I'm your host, Robert Helms. Most people start out their real estate investing path with a single-family home. It's not the only way to get started in real estate, but it is the most common. You may have grown up in a single-family home. There's lots of uses for a single-family home, and it's easy to understand the economic model. But as you look closer, there are lots of different uses for single-family homes. Sure, you can buy a home and put a tenant in it, but when you look closer, there are actually lots of different uses for single-family homes. Sometimes you'll have a home to rent in a neighborhood that is mostly comprised of owner-occupants. Other times, the neighborhood you invest in will be mostly tenant-occupied. Today, there's a lot of folks who are building inventory specifically for tenants. We call that build-to-rent or build-for-rent. But there's also some innovative uses for single-family homes. Think about the town you live in, or maybe the town you grew up in. Is there an area of town that you drive through, and in once single-family houses, there are businesses, law offices, little boutiques, mom-and-pop businesses. When those homes were built, they were built as residences on one of the main thoroughfares. But as the roads got busier and more commercial, rather than knock down those houses, businesses have figured out how to utilize that real estate. For years, one of my attorneys was in an old Victorian house that was built as a residence, but he turned into a beautiful office. Well, today we'll look at a very interesting use of a single-family home that solves a need that is growing by the day and gives real estate investors an opportunity to earn above-market rents. Think about that for a moment. How do you combat the fact that interest rates are high and we're paying more in our mortgage payments? It's hard to jack up the rent that high. But there are some uses of single-family homes where you get a premium, and that's what we're going to talk about today. I've known our guests for many years, and they've been in the real estate business more than 4 decades. And as you'll learn today, their niche is their passion project. It's good stuff. When we come back, today you meet Randy and Jana Hubbs on the Real Estate Guys radio program.
Hi, this is Bill Bonner. I'm author of Hormageddon, and I'm the publisher at Agora, where we publish more than 2.5 million readers around the world with the Real Estate Guys.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Guys radio program, now in our 28th year of broadcast. There's all kinds of interesting niches when it comes to real estate investing. We're going to hear about a really cool one today. Let's welcome back to the Real Estate Guys radio program our friends Randy and Jana Hubbs. Hey, guys.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, Robert.
Great to have you guys back on the program when it's not a Halloween horror story. So, in fact, what we're going to talk about today really has to do with your personal journey. So we met many years ago. I think, Randy, you came on a Dallas field trip, and we were looking at houses and apartments and all that kind of stuff. But take us back to the beginning. You guys are teachers, and you do teaching today, but in the truest sense of the word, talk about how you got started on teachers' salaries and found your way into real estate.
Sure. Well, we both come from real estate families. They were Ma and Pa landlords. And so my grandmother was very much into it. My parents, not so much, but she drug him into it. So we got to see both sides of that story. And then Jana's father was a realtor and he also owned rental houses. And so we're surrounded by that kind of growing up. And I used to even help my grandfather, clean and rentals and stuff like that, and clean mopped up after a fire when I was just a little kid, and so as soon as I got out of college, a good friend of mine called me up and said, "Hey, I'm gonna buy my aunt's house. I'm gonna fix it up and sell it. So you want a place to live, because my option was live with mom and dad, and so I jumped at the chance and helped him get this place all fixed up. He owned a kitchen and bath store, and so we ended up getting that going, and both of us all of a sudden fell in love with our significant others, and both couples are still married. We're going on 43 years, but as soon as I got my teaching job, my first position, within the first month, Jana's father picked up a house for me to, fix and flip. That was the idea in 1979. And so both of us were beginning teachers, both Jana and I. And so we were too busy with that first year trying to just figure out that whole world. High school band director, and Jana was a special education teacher. And so the house sat vacant until summertime, and we both strapped on a tool belt and off we went. And then the crash of 1980 hit. So we got our first lesson there. But we started seeing the value right away. And from there, we just turned that home into a rental, bought a couple more, really focused on our careers. But at the end of the day, we saw the value of buy and hold. And that's kind of what we just didn't want to retire on teachers' salaries. And so,
we knew we couldn't.
Yeah.
Well, that's such a good point, right? Teachers don't make very much money, and yet you found a way to be full-time teachers. You have that nice little summer break, so you could be a little hands-on, but you started to develop a portfolio. And this is kind of the thing I want to make sure people understand, that if you start early enough and you're disciplined and you find a niche, and you don't have to hit big home runs, these little base hits, rental property here, duplex there, buy a little 8-unit here, right? Over time, before you know it, you have a big portfolio, and you have today large apartment buildings and offshore holdings and all that kind of stuff. But it does take just that discipline and time. And it's not that everybody assumes a teacher is going to be able to take this path. You've kind of stirred it up a little bit. So talk about that part. I know you've had, friends and colleagues that have looked at you guys and go, man, how is it that, you have what you have when you just have a teacher's salary?
Well, I mean, for us, we saw the value of multifamily pretty early, starting with duplexes. And we really enjoyed that whole journey. We went from there as we got Freddie and Fannied out. That's right around the time I discovered the Real Estate Guys radio show. Really, it was during the 2008 crash. We dodged that bullet, but in the meantime, we'd already developed a pretty significant duplex portfolio, as well as some single family homes in our home market. But your statement, live where you want to live, but invest where the money makes sense, along coupled with taking Anthony Char's Apartment Mentors course. We were able to, after taking that course, close on our first 32-unit apartment complex within 6 months, and jumped into other markets after that.
And then one of the things that we always believed in was to save the money. Don't use that money to live on, but save it for additional investments. Save it to make sure that you've got the overhead income to handle any kind of repairs or deferred maintenance and those types of things. And we were babies when we did this, but, and we didn't have, like Randy said, we didn't necessarily have great role models because that wasn't their belief per se.
Well, the interesting thing on that was too, is we got in 1997, we decided to start flipping so we could get some money to invest in some, larger duplex portfolio kind of stuff. Through doing that, I read a book, Buy It, Flip It, and Sell It for Profit was the first one. And it knocked me sideways because it was like, oh, there's a lot I don't know here. And, how to work things backwards. And so I got so excited that I read a book and learned something that I went into Barnes and Nobles, and what had just happened, Kiyosaki's book had just come out. So it was just pasted all over there. read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And of course, I have to make a plug for that because it changed our life for sure.
Yeah, it is the whole thing. But you know the adage better than most that when the student's ready, the teacher appears. And I think that folks, whatever they do to live, thrive, and survive, they don't have to be full-time real estate investors. You can have a day job, you can own a business, you can do something with your time that you love, and then figure out how to build your portfolio slowly. Now, you did get to the point where you kind of, Randy, you moved from high school to college band director, and Jana, you moved from teacher to administrator, and so your careers were taking this direction, and ultimately, you did become full-time in real estate and started syndicating and doing bigger deals. Talk about that transition.
Well, I think the hardest part for me was figuring out what hat did I now wear, because I'm a firm believer in teaching other people, like in the office when I was an administrator. It's like we need to be able to cross-train and we need to know who we are. We are not just anybody. We're not just a bus driver. We're not just a secretary. We are this person. It was hard for me to figure out, really what is my role now? I still did the books and various things like that, or helped manage that. I studied tax and tax law and various things in that regard as well. And that's what I did in the evenings after we got the kids to bed and after piano and sports and that kind of information, activity and things. So it was that whole piece of figuring out, now what do I do? I've got this time on my hands and now I need to create something different.
Yeah. And I think for me, both of us were just impassioned about our careers. I mean, we were full-time on that. Like you said, we had summers, so we spent summers in the real estate side of things, and also having fun and doing the different activities we enjoyed with the family. What I felt was, I literally, not the two of us, but by the time I was 40 years old, I was out of the rat race. I was already, the real estate portfolio was doing better than my income. Jana's income was still higher as an administrator, but it gave me a sense of power from a standpoint of I didn't have to stay in that job, but I loved the job. And that made, for me as a teacher, it changed the whole way I had that freedom to do what I wanted to do and didn't feel like I had to be, I just had a great job. And so I stayed with it until 2015. And your dad, the godfather, was the one that said, you need to go get your real estate license, because as a college professor, I was able to legally make that thing work because my contract said 15 hours a week. And yet, your dad finally said, hey, you need to go just get your broker's license. And from there, that really began to evolve, and we started branding and those kinds of things. And very much like his book, where we specialized in investment housing was our whole approach.
Well, I really love this part of your story, and I want it to resonate with folks that you can love what you do, your vocation, whatever that is, and real estate can offer you the ability to build a financial fortress around your family, as Jim Rohn would say. And then some people do get the bug and go full-time. You have an area that is near and dear to your heart that has to do, Jana, with your background as a special education teacher and a unique vantage point that's led you to a pretty interesting real estate niche. Tell us about that.
Right. Well, when I first started, I was 22 years old, I think, and I started at a high school, which was a little scary because I was barely older than the seniors in that area. But right. I taught life skills and self-contained, and I also taught resource, but the higher functioning kiddos. But I learned a lot because I turned that classroom into a functional classroom. That's what I believed in was, number one, we work on communication, we work on eye contact, we work on looking good and smelling good. And then we have to learn how to do things for ourselves as far as home repairs and various activities like that, or auto repairs. I brought in tools. I worked with my dad on getting toolkits and various things like that. We did woodworking and furniture repair and, just a variety of things, because the reading and the writing I found as I was growing up, the neighbor boy, he could not read hardly anything, but he was into mechanics. Give him an auto mechanics book and he could read that. But yet, could he read any other kind of story? No, he wasn't interested. So it had to be a high interest. And that was the main focus. So then we just took it a little bit further, and decided that, hey, with the real estate, the other thing I found was that in working with agencies, I was an active teacher, meaning that I sought other resources out. Looking at the transition of my students out of the high school, I would find that they would be sitting at home because nobody could pick them up. Nobody would be able to take them and help them with their housing needs and the skills that they had learned so well in high school. They were atrophying in their homes because they were living at home with their parents, grandparents, or their siblings. And it's like, this is not the way things should be.
And that's what I think a lot of that has to do when a parent or a guardian discovers at a very early age that they have a special needs child, their life changes and they go through a variety of things, depression, whatever that might be. But then they're learning to cope and deal. There's just so many more responsibilities that come with some special needs individuals. And they oftentimes miss what the opportunities are out there. And nor do they even think about housing because there's this problem of, they feel like they are, and yes, they are the best caregiver that person can have. But unfortunately, that overprotectiveness then causes those skills, like Jana said, to atrophy. And then the next thing you know, they're sitting in home in a bedroom playing Xbox while, their parents are renting that room to them using SSI, so it's supplemental security income money that they get after school. And they chug along and live life until mom and dad finally make the discovery that, hey, we're not getting any younger here. And what are we going to do with Johnny over here? And so this has been what we call the crisis. And the fact that by the time someone makes that realization and they start looking at getting on a waiting list, every city and every state's got long waiting lists that can last as long as 15 to 20 years just to get housing. And so independent living is something that we're really passionate about, is seeing them, the parents get educated to this, or the guardians, whoever that might be. But being able to then, start looking at the options where their son or daughter, when they turn 18, maybe they already own a home and that's ready for them to move into, or they're working with other parents and guardians, and there's so many different things that options that are available to them that they just aren't aware of. And that's where we really saw the need to see what we can do to make a change here.
Our mutual friends, Josh and Lisa Lannon, wrote the Rich Dad book, The Social Capitalist, the idea that you can do something that matters to you and also be profitable. Our late great friend, Gene Garino, said you can do well and do good. And I think this is exactly the point here, is that you were passionate about these people. And Jana, you recognized, hey, I have some skills to be able to help them cope, to be able to help them do better in life. And when they're under 18, they're living with mom and dad, and there's some special care required there, but they're learning these skills so they can go out into the world. And then some of them don't get out into the world, or when they do, that assistance, that help stops. And there's this wide array when you think of special needs, and it's so many different types of people who can be very high functioning or have, an issue in one area, but they overcome in another area. And there's not really been a cohesive plan to find this independent living where you have the parents involved, but not there every day. And so we started talking about this, I don't know, you mentioned this idea 7, 8 years ago, and you have worked super hard to get to the point where it's working. So talk about the properties you have now where you have special needs adults and what that looks like.
Sure. And I just one thing to add to that, Gene Garino, the late great Gene Garino, he was definitely an inspiration. But in 2012, we came on our first summit at sea, and that's when Josh and Lisa and Lannon knocked us sideways with, and we read that book, and that's when we made this decision that, hey, this is something we could do. And so we were highly inspired by that. But we started back in 2018, and we were looking to get into this for adults with special needs. And one of my skydiving buddies I found was a caregiver that for special needs children. And so the more we talked, the more we saw a need to provide that they needed stability. And so we actually ended up buying a couple of group homes they're 5-bedroom homes. They weren't group homes, but that's their model. And so we started out with 2 5-bedroom homes in the Spokane Valley, and still have those, and that's been wonderful. And we went from there into starting to place them into our, one side of a duplex, and then down the street a little bit, rather than trying to, institutionalize the whole street. We, scattered it out to where these people are integrated into the rest of society. And so we started putting them into duplexes, single family homes, and then we started putting them in our apartment units. And so that's just we wanted to do was test this model to see how well it worked. So far we've had one move out in 5 years, and that move out was only because mom and dad finally got placement for their kid that they'd been waiting for, who was extremely high needs. And what did they do? They moved to the East Coast, and
another move out because of the person passing away.
Yeah, that's right. We had a great gentleman that unfortunately died from a diabetes, but now we've got another person in that same. That was actually one that was modified for wheelchair access,
Texas.
And so the second, he was out. We had another person in there. So,
and that was because of developing relationships within those communities with the agencies that provide the service. We don't provide the service, we provide the real estate. And the management companies, as far as training them what to do and what not to do.
And that's a really good point. I think the fact that you have come from a background of recognizing these needs, and then people don't think what happens when, this 8-year-old kid who has these challenges is 18 or 28 or 38. And the fact that I think you got some people's attention when you talk about low turnover. We all know the most expensive things in buy and hold real estate is vacancy and turnover costs. And if you can lower that and still provide a great environment with some of that support, that's got people's attention. But talk about the model of the 5-bedroom home. So how does that work? And do you rent by the room? And what about the fact that they're on SSI and things like that? How does the model come together?
Yeah, so the group home environment, see, every state's going to have a different number, just like we see in the assisted living arena is the same thing. So, and group homes are not necessarily looked at real highly because of some of the drug alcohol rehabs, and there goes the neighborhood kind of attitude that starts happening. So there's been a lot of issues with that. But this particular population, you can't discriminate, and it's very much like assisted living from that standpoint. And so the group home model, though, it can be structured a variety of ways. That's one of the things that we, depending on the person and what their comfort zone is and level of involvement, we don't want to get into the care whatsoever. And so we literally have a commercial lease with these agencies that have the group homes for children. So they are funded by the state. It's not soft money. These kids have nowhere to go. So they are providing their food, their clothing, their Christmas gifts. They get them to school. They feed them. So all that money is provided by the state. And then we are able to charge on a rent by the room kind of basis, is how we did the numbers. But it's not, in our case, we're just renting it for a set price, which in this case happens to be more than market rents. At one point in time, it was almost double what market rents, but of course, as we know, rents have gone up. Nonetheless, we've got some other models where we have basically we charge on a per room basis, and then there's a way, just like an apartment complex or an assisted living facility, you have your common areas. And so we get into this whole SSI kind of funding. Well, the government gives money, but they taketh away if that person gets a job and has income, or they taketh away if they're being supplemented by some other by a parent or a guardian. So that kind of is a double-edged sword, which is a problem in this country. Not to get into international stuff, but we met some people in Australia that do this and that were actual caregivers. Their system is totally different and lots more governmental support. But right now, the way it's structured is in order to get around that, certainly one of the ways is that you can then subsidize those common areas. So you treat it just like an apartment complex. So the rent by the room model is a solution in a lot of cases, just depending on what market you're in and what you're looking at, putting them in. I mean, the beautiful part about this is housing is housing. And so it can be you can put them in manufactured homes, tiny homes. We see tiny home communities. We see developments for this. There's an amazing facility out of Houston that's, a full campus kind of thing. And so there's just so many different ways to approach this model. So it's really comes down to the individual investor and what their desires are, but they don't have to get involved with the care. It's helpful to know about the population, just so they can speak the language. And that's where Jana really comes in when it comes to the course.
Well, and it's not yet mainstream, although you guys are certainly making strides and we see places that's working, but it's an underserved demographic, which I think is why there's opportunity. Can you speak to that part?
Yeah. You remember Gene Greeno always talked about the silver tsunami and the baby boomers. What we are seeing is that not just autism. We're hearing a lot about autism, but the whole, spectrum, and there's a variety of reasons, but this whole crisis is being ignored. They put their head in the sand. They don't realize that the special needs population is really growing. And so I don't know whether that's the food we eat, the devices we give them at early ages, whatever that may be. We could speculate all day long, but the reality of it is it's really coming on strong. And so there's a huge need. And, and that's why we see it as an ability to do a social capitalistic project here. And, it's our BHAG. We want to solve the special needs housing crisis in the U.S.
But the other situation is that parents are resistant to the change. They're used to the nonprofit model and trying to make sure that little Johnny No-No is in a safe environment, that he or she is not vulnerable, to other people. And so there's a strong resistance in helping them to maintain independence by living on their own, because they don't feel that they have the skills in order to take care of themselves and protect themselves. And so that's a large part of our communication is you've got to do this because you're only going to live so long. It's imperative that we get them into a situation where you are really comfortable with their environment and the decisions that are being made and the care that is being provided to them.
Yeah, and just how to navigate the system. That's the biggest piece.
Right.
We're talking about a very unique niche, special needs housing, with Jana and Randy Hubbs. We'll talk more about where there may be opportunity for real estate investors, and we'll play real estate trivia next. You're tuned to the Real Estate Guys radio program. I'm your host, Robert Helms.
Live nationwide, you're listening to the Real Estate Guys. Find out more at realestateguysradio.com.
As I speak, inflation is robbing you at a rate north of 10%. Last year, the number one zip code that Mid-South homebuyers offered income property to Real Estate Guys listeners in appreciated by 21%. To harness that spread and protect and grow your wealth in the current economic storm, you need the 2 decades of experience in renovation and management that Mid-South homebuyers brings to their investors. Every home Mid-South offers you will have brand new components, a new 30-year roof, and a high-quality renter, all in a price range under $150,000. Their empathetic property managers will use your ROI as their North Star, while the lack of repairs on their totally renovated properties contributes to their almost 4-year average renter stay and 99% occupancy rate. Learn about their lifetime occupancy guarantee and total 1-year maintenance guarantee by emailing midsouth@realestateguysradio.com. That's midsouth@realestateguysradio.com. You'll be glad you did.
Hi, I'm Garrett Sutton.
And I'm Ted Sutton.
And we're the father and son legal team at Corporate Direct.
Are your assets protected? We live in a litigious society.
One lawsuit and you could lose everything.
You need the professional and affordable asset protection from Corporate Direct.
And now, on top of protecting your assets, the government has a new disclosure requirement called the Corporate Transparency Act, or CTA.
If you don't file the CTA form on time, the penalties are $10,000 and 2 years in jail.
At Corporate Direct, we can help you get through this new government maze.
We offer a free 15-minute consultation with an incorporating specialist on forming a corporation or LLC.
And we can help with your CTA filings. Remember, the penalties for not filing are steep. We're here at Corporate Direct to help.
To learn more and get connected to Garrett and Ted, send an email to act@realestateguysradio.com. That's act@realestateguysradio.com.
Hello, this is Robert Kiyosaki. I'm the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And if you're serious about learning how to invest in real estate, listen to the Real Estate Guys. They really know what they're talking about.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Guys radio program. We're so glad you're here. Hey, come join me in Jacksonville, Florida for our Jacksonville field trip. We'll take a look at the market and some surrounding markets, learn where the sustainable drivers are, understand the path of progress, and look at some cool real estate. It happens September 13th through the 15th, and you can find out more if you go to realestateguysradio.com under events. When you hover over it, you'll see live and in-person events where you'll find the Jacksonville field trip. It's a great trip if you're just starting out in real estate. You're going to learn a ton about how we approach markets, but it's also a market that has awesome inventory. So check it out at realestateguysradio.com under events. We're talking with Randy and Jana Hubbs, who have figured out a way to create opportunity and take care of tenants they care about, what we would call social capitalism. Before we get back to the interview with the Hubbs, it's time to play real estate trivia. Your chance to win a prize by knowing today's real estate trivia question. When you hear the question and think you might know the answer, just send your best guess to trivia@realestateguysradio.com. Trivia@realestateguysradio.com. Give us your name, your guess, and your physical mailing address. The first person to get the right answer is going to win a vintage copy of Tom Wheelwright's awesome book, Tax-Free Wealth. You get to know Jana, you know she's all about the numbers and she studies tax. This is an awesome book to start with, Tax-Free Wealth by CPA Tom Wheelwright. That can be yours if you know today's real estate trivia question. Last week we had Brian London of the New Orleans Investment Conference on the program. We asked this: the tallest building in the state of Louisiana is in New Orleans. What building is that? Well, some good guesses. The answer, the Hancock Whitney Center, built in 1972. The building is 51 stories and 697 feet tall. Now, interestingly enough, a building called the Place St. Charles has more stories, 53 stories, but it's 52 feet shorter. If you want to see those buildings, well, join us at the 50th Annual New Orleans Investment Conference. Just send an email to neworleans@realestateguysradio.com. Here's our real estate trivia question for this week. Which U.S. state has the most lakes? Yeah, there's really 4 kinds of lakes in the U.S. There's naturally occurring lakes, man-made lakes, unnamed lakes, and what they call named lakes. Which U.S. state has the most of those lakes? If you know or just want to guess, send your best guess to trivia@realestateguysradio.com. Trivia@realestateguysradio.com. Send us your name, the answer to the question, and your physical mailing address. The first person that gets it right gets a vintage copy of Tax-Free Wealth by CPA Tom Wheelwright. That's today's real estate trivia question. We're talking about special needs housing. Folks that have a little bit of trouble getting through life, getting through their day. They need some support. Maybe that it has to do with their physicality. It may be mental. There's all kinds of special needs out there. And it really has not been addressed from a housing point of view. We're with Randy and Jana Hubbs, and they are tackling this big, awesome opportunity. It is a crisis, but at the same time, in every crisis, there's opportunity. And let's talk about, guys, the opportunity for an individual investor. Maybe I have some homes that might be appropriate for this, or maybe I'm just looking for a way to get behind this cause. But to your point earlier, Jana, not as a nonprofit necessarily, but as a profitable endeavor.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, the main thing that we see here is that it's wide open for based on where a real estate investor is. If they're, let's say they're new, we have one of the things that we found is that through, going up to a mom and pop landlord where you might find a property that's a little bit under market, they've kept people in there for a long time. They're not really necessarily paying close attention, but they're really not liking to be landlords anymore. A younger person that maybe doesn't even own any real estate can come in and start a process where they can sublease the property, work with an agency, put special needs people in there, and then mom and pa are collecting a steady check, but they're making a spread. So there's a way to do it without real estate ownership. However, you've got a lot of listeners on your show that own property, so it's an easy conversion too. And one might think the first thing that comes to mind is like the first thing we think is wheelchair access. Oh, I got to put ramps in. I got to do all this stuff. Yes, there are modifications that are sometimes needed, but honestly, we only have a few people that have, that are not mobile enough to walk stairs. And so any type of housing works here. So if in converting, there's oftentimes government money. I think that one of the most challenging things for our students to learn, what we're finding that they run into, is finding agencies, working with these agencies, and because the agencies will sometimes actually lease the property. So again, it's like a commercial lease, or they make the individuals be independent and sign on the lease. And so that you may have that rent by the room model because you have 3 people placed in your 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, or manufactured home, or whatever type of roof you have over their heads. Let's put it that way. The conversion is simple from the standpoint of the agencies already know there's government monies available. It could be a situation where the person themselves needs to pay for those things, but that's kind of more of a rare occasion. But nonetheless, these modifications can be done. And oftentimes when we say modifications, they're improvements. Like sometimes a bathroom, you'll take out the bathtub and put a stand-up shower in there. Well, we see a lot of homes, people doing that anyway. And so it's at no charge. You can have that conversion made, which is awesome. But at the end of the duration of when these people are completing their lease, they have to put it back to original condition, unless you as an owner say, no, we'll keep the grab rails here. We can, we love the stand-up shower. Then you get to keep that. So it's at no cost. The other beautiful thing is that the agencies themselves are in your property frequently enough to where now, instead of, like, say, if you have it under property management and they show up twice a year to inspect a property only to find out the 5-gallon bucket's underneath the sink and it's been running over because the P-trap broke and now we've got a kitchen cabinet that we have to replace. These people are going to keep their eye on the property. And here's the beautiful part, Robert. They usually repair it themselves because they have their own repair people. So you're saving repair expenses, and the home is being turned when they return it back, which we had that done with this one person. It was in better shape than when we originally leased it out.
Well, this is a great point because a landlord is concerned about that vacancy factor. When you have what amounts to a master lease, then it's not up to the landlord to worry if they don't have people placed because the agency's going to place that. It's not that different from public housing agencies that place Section 8 tenants, right? They have a list of things that the units have to live up to, and then they kind of manage the risk, and you get most of the money paid by the agency. In this case, the agency is working about the caregiving. What you're doing is providing a clean, safe, affordable place to live. You make some modifications. These aren't massive modifications. Some of the assisted living model can be adding walls, adding bedrooms, and so forth. They generally want a 1-story house. In the case of special needs, can it be a 2-story house?
Absolutely. It can be pretty much anything. The only modification we had to make on the very first group home that we had is we went down, it had 2.5 baths. In the half bath, when you walked in there, they also had the water heater and the air handler for the HVAC side by side. And so the person that we were working with, he looked at it and he was, this isn't going to work very well. But I said, well, all we have to do is box this in, right? Just make put it in a closet. And he's like, oh yeah, all we have to do is, basically we framed in, or we had a contractor frame it in, put louvered bifold doors in so the air handler could breathe. And we put a locking mechanism on it so no kids could get in there and tamper with it. $1,100, and that was our modification.
Right.
And so on a beautiful 5-bedroom home.
Or we had a countertop that we had to take out or replace.
We had to change colors on it because it was red. And so
that's a red flag right there.
It can be, just depending on the type of person's disability. We've seen people that react to colors or bright colors. And so, but that was, those are simple little things that can easily be done. And we have, again, with all the units we've had, we literally have, the only thing that we'll do is put vinyl planking floor in. If there are, mobility issues with someone in a walker or a wheelchair, but we've just found that the vinyl planking is a better product anyway than carpet. It lasts longer. We just had an individual who rocks all day long, wear through the kitchen vinyl. And so we got free vinyl planking out of that deal. They came in and said, hey, can we replace the floor? And so, sure. Yeah, we didn't have to pay for that. They matched it right up with the existing flooring. And so, this expense saving is amazing.
So saving on expenses, you have generally higher above market rents, you have less vacancy. It sounds pretty awesome, and you're doing a cool thing. But there's a lot to learn here. Just that little idea about you can't have something bright red. I wouldn't have known that, but you've been, Jana, around these people for your whole life. And I think the sensitivities, the devil's in the details, as they say. And for the past couple of years, you mentioned students because you put together an entire training program on what it takes to be this type of a landlord. If you want the lower vacancy, if you want the higher rent, there are some things you have to do. You do not have to be the caregiver, but there are things to understand. So I'm super excited that you have this course out. I know it's been a labor of love. I've seen various pieces of it for the last couple of years, but it's finally done. Tell us about the course.
So the course has to do with, obviously we talk about real estate, and Randy does a large portion of that, but it's also learning how to navigate systems within communities, because almost everybody knows somebody that has a disability, whether it's a hearing impairment, vision impairment, speech, physical, mental, or intellectual. And so it's about learning the language. It's navigating systems within each community as far as agencies. Agencies are hard to find because they don't advertise as far as serving the disabled population. They don't advertise like that. So it's a little more difficult. So I've done a lot of research in many different states and communities in order to just figure this out. We tried it out in Memphis, in Texas, southeastern Spokane, and Seattle was another area that I did a lot of work with.
Billings, Montana.
Yeah. So I've tried to help navigate, and through that process of delving into searching for agencies and community leaders within that population, I was able to pinpoint systems that would help other people that maybe didn't have the background and knowledge that I have, because I've got a degree in this area. I served the population for 35 years, but developed systems where people could understand and utilize some of the letters that we put together, as well as some of the tools and the websites and those kinds of avenues, some of the search engine words, if you will. And then we also talk about not being afraid of the disabled person or the person with a disability. A lot of times people kind of are standoffish because they don't know how to respond, or they don't quite know how to react. And it's imperative that we just get comfortable. They are humans just like we are. And there's no difference at all, except they might have a twitch, or they might have something, that is off, that stands out a little bit more than somebody else, but they have feelings and they wake up the same way that we do and, manage their day. And so it's important to learn the language with the agency. It's important to show compassion and an understanding so that there's patience and concern there as well.
And I think just to kind of add a little bit to that, and and reiterate, it's not like you have to, you're not going to be working so much with this population. It's just understanding it so that we've had, for example, landlords who, have been afraid of this because maybe a person with a behavior issue when they first move into a place is, kicking holes in the wall. Well, that to a landlord would be a big red flag, and I can't have this, and especially if they're on the property a lot. But if they understand that the agency is going to take care of this, they're going to make whatever repairs. We've had an agency say, "Hey, we want to put up exterior siding inside this person's bedroom until we get this behavior under control. Then we'll put it back together." And of course, you wouldn't even know it was anytime there's any kind of damage done, they're on top of it, they repair it. So I think it's understanding that there are just certain behaviors that are sometimes exhibited that people need to get comfortable with the fact that this isn't anything I have to worry about as an owner or a landlord.
Also, another portion of our course deals with property management. And so it could be parents who are landlords, or it could be property management, but it's really understanding this population and that it's okay to let things slide a little bit. It's okay to say, hey, agency, they're going to go knock on doors and say, just when Susie comes out and she has an issue, or Johnny comes out and has an issue, just ignore it. Don't stare like they're in a fishbowl. Just ignore it. If they wave at you, just wave back and say hi, so that we're teaching other neighbors and community members how to respond appropriately to our individuals with disabilities.
And that's just part of understanding your demographic, which is awesome. Now, I know you've had the opportunity to teach this a few times. In fact, you guys are about to be at a conference teaching this. And then on the 22nd Annual Investors Summit, we're certainly going to have you be explaining this over roundtable lunches and that kind of thing. But the course is all done virtually, so you don't have to go anywhere to take this course. Tell us about how long it is and what it looks like and how long it takes to get through it.
Sure. Well, it is extensive. I taught online courses my last few years in college, and I also took a lot of online courses, which, most of them I've not been a big fan of. I guess being in the entertainment business, I really wanted to make sure it was captivating and this wasn't the same thing over and over. But it is 30 lessons. So it's divided into 7 different modules. And so much of it is, the crisis and the solution, getting that whole figured out, getting an understanding around that. Then, Jana spends quite a bit of time talking about what is special needs, what it's not, and what this really applies to, government funding, agencies. So there's those kinds of things that are out there. I spend quite a bit of time talking about the real estate portion. So it's broken in a sequential way and we didn't set up the course to where you had to finish this module or this lesson before you could go to the next one. You can bounce around. And so if somebody's got it, they happens to be a lesson they're very proficient at, then, they want to move on to a different spot, or they want to go back and review. So we've tried to make it very user friendly. I'd say there's probably at least 30 hours of content total, probably in this thing.
At least.
Yeah.
Plus we've got documents within the course that they can download and use. One of the goals that we had for the course, because both of us are educators, we wanted it to be exciting. We didn't want people yawning or going, oh my gosh, putting it down and not ever opening it up. Our goal was to make it exciting, entertaining as much as possible, but give it a learning environment so that we were pulling them into our audience and making them want to learn this information.
Well, we certainly have covered a lot today. If you're thinking this might be a niche you'd like to take a look at, Randy and Jana put together an awesome ebook. It's called Solving the Special Needs Housing Crisis in the U.S., and I'll go over some of the points that we talked about today and a few more as well. If you'd like to get a copy of that, just send an email to specialneeds@realestateguysradio.com. Specialneeds@realestateguysradio.com. You'll get their contact details as well. Well, I'm excited to see you guys next week at the 22nd Annual Investors Summit. Thanks for sharing with us today.
All right. Thank you very much.
We are super excited. We'll see you real soon.
There's Randy and Jana Hubbs. Special Needs at realestateguysradio.com to learn more. You're tuned to the Real Estate Guys radio program. I'm your host, Robert Helms.
Need help with your real estate investment portfolio? Check out the resources page at realestateguysradio.com.
The Real Estate Guys are throwing a party, and you're invited. Join us at the New Orleans Investment Conference, November 20th to 23rd. Now in its 50th year, it's the nation's longest-running investment conference and features some of the biggest names in economics and investing, including James Grant, George Gammon, Danielle DiMartino Booth, Rick Rule, Lynn Alden, and Doug Casey. Plus, I'll be speaking in multiple sessions, attending lots of others. And the Real Estate Guys are hosting our annual invitation-only party one of the evenings for our friends and listeners, including some VIPs for you to mingle with. So make plans today to join the Real Estate Guys at the 50th Annual New Orleans Investment Conference. With all that's going on in the world, no serious investor can afford to miss it. Send an email to neworleans@realestateguysradio.com and we'll get you all the details. And I'll see you there. Looking to achieve passive income through real estate investing? Well, let me introduce you to Jim Shields and our friends over at Southern Impression Homes. Jim and the team have worked with hundreds of investors in our community over the last decade to help make their rental property goals a reality. They only build new construction in high-growth, landlord-friendly markets in Florida and offer cutting-edge property management to help protect not only your assets, but your time. And to top it off, Southern Impression Homes offers in-house financing with mortgage rates as low as 4.75%. You can close on one of their new construction properties, either a single-family, duplex, or quad, in less than 30 days. Let Jim and the team help you achieve your goals of financial freedom like they've done for so many others. Check out their build-to-rent program by sending an email to sihomes@realestateguysradio.com. 1031 exchange buyers are welcome. That's sihomes@realestateguysradio.com.
Hi, I'm Steve Forbes. You're listening to The Real Estate Guys. Listen up.
And welcome back to the Real Estate Guys radio program, now in our 28th year of broadcast. Hey, I've got an awesome opportunity for you. At the end of August, Kenny McElroy and Tarl Yarber are putting on their Limitless event. This is a fantastic 3-day event with incredible speakers like Robert Kiyosaki, Brandon Turner, George Gammon, Pace Morby, Mark Moss, Kathy and Rich Fetke, Jason Hartman, Dana Samuelson, and yours truly. It's not just about real estate, although there's a lot of real estate investors there. It's an incredible group of folks, and you should add your name to the list. Go to the website at realestateguysradio.com under events, where you'll find the Limitless Expo, and you'll see there is a code for you to save 10%. I'll look forward to seeing you there. Well, gosh, great to hear from Randy and Jana Hubbs. This has been a passion project for them with Jana's unique background and their real estate expertise. It's been awesome. I will say that they have had some stumbling blocks because of the bureaucracy that sometimes revolves around these agencies. They've really had to dig deep, but Jana's a researcher at heart, and she has figured out a way to not only profit, but to help these folks, and it's awesome. They also have another lesson. Often at our Secrets of Successful Syndication seminar, I'll ask them to come up on stage on day 2. We have a segment called Evidence of Success, proof of concept, people that are actually doing the thing. And the neat thing about Randy and Jana is their working relationship as a couple. They've been investing since they were young. They have a very successful portfolio. They teach other people how to invest, especially in this niche. And they figured out a way to work together that's inspiring. You know, not everybody wants to work with their spouse, but they have it figured out. So when you run into them at one of the Real Estate Guys events, that's a thing to ask them about, not just success in real estate, but success as a couple working together. If you're interested in learning more about their special needs housing course, they've written an ebook that explains the course and how it works, gives you the high notes. You get a copy of that by sending an email to specialneeds@realestateguysradio.com. specialneeds@realestateguysradio.com. Hey, before we get out of here, it is time for this week's Market Spotlight. Today, we'll head to another awesome, interesting part of the United States. And to do that, welcome back to the Real Estate Guys radio program. our good friend Sep McCom. Hey, Sep.
Hey, Robert. Great to be with you again.
Well, it's good to have you. You have a bunch of single-family houses in all kinds of marketplaces. Tell us about the market we're going to spotlight today.
Yeah, so I've been investing in Kansas City since 2016, and we have about 180 houses over there. And just originally started buying portfolios in that market and then pivoted to just buying one-off houses. But what I really like about the market is that it's been a stable, like kind of a slow and steady market. Doesn't get all the attention of like a Miami or some of the other like major markets, and just the resiliency with it. Most people don't know it's actually located right in between the state of Missouri and Kansas.
Right.
There's actually two separate mayors over there. The metro's got 2 million people, but it still has a small town feel. Like there's a lot of smaller suburbs like around it. It's gotten a lot of investment capital, just like especially in the downtown. They've had over $6 billion in investment since 2005. As many of the listeners know, home to the Kansas City Chiefs, to a Major League Baseball team, Major League Soccer, and they've also got a NASCAR track. But I like that it's not just one employer. And it's kind of hard to say, well, this is the only employer where like the tenants work at, right? Just because it's so diverse as far as the industries.
Well, let's talk about that part. What are some of the industries? And, you think about your tenants and where they go to work. What are some of those places?
Yeah. So Ford and GM, they both have manufacturing plants over there. They employ about 8,000 people. Ford actually produces the F-150 truck. They manufacture hybrid vehicles. Kansas City, it's home to 7 Fortune 1000 companies, H&R Block, Cerner, which is a big health and IT company. They were bought out by Oracle last year. Kansas City Southern Railroad, Euronet, Evergy, and Facebook is actually developing an $800 million data center over there. It was home to Sprint back before they got acquired by T-Mobile, and now it's home basically to T-Mobile's second headquarters. And beyond that, there's about 30 universities and colleges, and that includes everything from nursing, medicine, engineering, law. That's as far as like on the education side of it. And then as far as on the distribution and manufacturing, Walmart, they're building a $257 million case-ready beef facility. And Kansas City, it's also the largest rail center in the U.S. by tonnage. So there's a lot of transportation, there's a lot of industrial activity going on there, a lot of manufacturing. Panasonic is building a $4 billion EV factory that's projected to make 4,000 jobs. Currently, EV demand is a little bit lower, right? It's lower than it was last year, but hybrids still need batteries, right? All the consumer electronics still need batteries. So there's a reason as far as them not pulling the plug on that.
No pun intended.
Yeah. The Metro is also the leader for animal health and drug development and diagnostics for the world. So about 60% of pet food sales, animal health, and all that goes through the Kansas City area. There's about 300 animal health companies. So there are a lot of major players over there. Even with all that, it's still low cost of doing business, still low housing costs. And the biggest employer, even with all these private employers that I mentioned, the biggest employer is still the federal government. So as much as I want to abolish the IRS and the Federal Reserve, they are the largest employers. And that does provide a level of stability as far as with the Metro. So it's just a great place. It doesn't feel like it's too expensive, but you still have enough of that geographic and employment diversity for being able to serve the tenants over there.
Well, and obviously affordability is a big deal when it comes to buy and hold, and looking for markets where folks can't necessarily either scrape up the 20% or qualify for a loan to buy a house, so they end up renting. What is the typical 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom rental house go for in that market?
A lot lower than California. On the low end, anywhere from $1,200 up to like $1,600 a month. Just depending on the part of town. So definitely affordable. Those rents have gone up compared to 5-6 years ago, but still a lot more affordable than the coastal markets.
Well, and the other thing you think about, all the thoughts about jobs, you need to have jobs for tenants to be attracted to a market, but we look for the kind of jobs that aren't likely to move. And when you have rail and infrastructure and an industry like the pet care industry in an area, makes it harder to move. So that's stability as well. So lots of things to like about Kansas City. Talk about specifically what you do in the market, because you have kind of a cool niche.
Yeah, so our goal is basically to help retire the slumlords. So we want to buy the distressed properties, and a lot of times they're local to the market. It's not like they're always like out of state and sight unseen. But buying those properties that are dilapidated, that need work, they haven't had the CapEx that's necessary to be able to make the house more resilient for a tenant. We like to buy those, reposition those, get them renovated, and have them professionally managed by our property management teams over there. Just keep them as long-term rentals. So we've been doing, as far as renting out the entire house and also pivoting to renting out by the room, going down that model as well, because there's still a big need for the affordable housing in the market. Even with all the activity in the metro, there's still some tenants that their wages aren't keeping up with inflation. So there's an opportunity for an investor to go in and put in a 30-year fixed mortgage on there, then you can make it a win-win, right? You can make it cash flow, and you can also make it affordable for the tenants.
Love that. All right, Sepp, thanks so much for checking in with us about Kansas City.
My pleasure, Robert. Thanks for having me on.
There's Sepp Bacam from Bacam Investment Group. You can find Sepp at the 22nd Annual Investors Summit at Sea or most every other Real Estate Guys event. Don't know if you caught that Sepp mentioned the idea of renting out houses by the room. That's another way to get more yield out of a single-family home. We'll take a deep dive into that in the coming weeks and show you a way that you might be able to squeeze a little more rent out of a house you already own. Big thanks to Sepp Bacam for updating us on Kansas City, Missouri, and Kansas, and of course to Randy and Jana Hubbs. Get the details about their course by sending an email to specialneeds@realestateguysradio.com. Or better yet, come on the 22nd Annual Investors Summit at Sea. It is just right around the corner. And as of this moment, one single cabin left. Come join us in paradise with an incredible group of investors and speakers. There is nothing like it. Another great show next week on the Real Estate Guys. Until then, go out and make some equity happen.
This episode of the Real Estate Guys radio show is brought to you by Paradigm Life. Powerful cash management strategies using life insurance. Learn more at beyourbank.com. Mid-South Home Buyers. Low-cost, turnkey cash flow properties in Memphis, Tennessee. Corporate Direct. Asset protection strategies for real estate investors from attorney and Rich Dad advisor Garrett Sutton. Find these and other great companies under the Resources tab at realestateguysradio.com. To learn how you can expose your product or service to the Real Estate Guys audience, call 888-489-7723 extension 4. That's 888-489-7723 extension 4. Or use the feedback page at realestateguysradio.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week right here on the Real Estate Guys Radio Show.